Good evening and welcome to Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Cindy Mabi and this is our top story this half hour. Zimbabwe's incoming interim president Emmerson Mnangagwa will be inaugurated tomorrow. Mnangagwa appeals to Zimbabweans to work together and revitalize the economy. The strategy for economic development, reconnection with the international community and involvement of all citizens and political players, regardless of which party they support, will be the masterstroke in Zimbabwe's turnaround strategy. Mnangagwa will be addressing Zimbabweans who welcomed him on his return from South Africa, described the country's current transition as the unfolding of a new democracy.
I think you have heard of or read my letter, which I sent to His Excellency, asking the President, Mugabe, and saying, Mr. President, the people have spoken. You yourself said, if the people say I must step down, you shall comply. This is the time to comply. The G40 cabal had captured the executive in the person of our president. Orders were now coming not from the executive, from people outside the executive to implement in government and to run government. But the people of Zimbabwe yourselves have refused.
Let's take a look at some of the challenges ahead of Mnangagwa. Firstly, he needs to ensure free and fair elections in 2018, restoring political and economic confidence, bringing the economy back to a growth trajectory, and a fallout of possible influx of natives returning home, and strengthening democratic institutions. And former Zimbabwean Finance Minister Tendai Biti says that 82% of Zimbabweans are living in extreme poverty. Biti says the economy of Zimbabwe is on a downward spiral.
So we have the economic crisis. 95% of our people are unemployed. It's hard to imagine when you put it in figures, but it's the truth. 82% of our people are living in extreme poverty, surviving on less than US 35 cents a day, which is something like 5 rand. We have got the challenge of a huge fiscal crisis arising out of the failure by the authorities to implement a strong anti-cyclical fiscal regime. And if you look at the economy of Zimbabwe, it loves these cycles, these elongated cycles of slums and booms, like slums and booms, slums and booms. The last time around was between 1997 and 2008, a period, an 11-year period in respect of which the economy lost 60% of its value. We have had essentially a situation where in 1980, the guerrilla movement did not demilitarize. So for all intents and purposes, Zimbabwe has basically remained a securocratic state up to the present moment. And this has been heightened by the fact that at all material times, the party, the ruling party, and the state have conflated. So decisions that are made in ZANU-PF, in the party, affect the state. Decisions that are made in the state are synonymous and congruent with the vital interests of the party. And precisely because it has been a securocratic state, whoever was the head of state was the mere normative representative of this military order. And he or she would remain so as long as he or she continued to serve the interests of the military. And once that person served stopped serving the interests of the military, they would recall him. And so in a way, what happened last week was a recall of someone who was no longer acting in the best interests of the securocratic state. But that doesn't tell the complete story. The true story is that as of now, Zimbabwe, and before the removal of President Mugabe, Zimbabwe was caught up in a series of multiple crises that all converged at one particular historic juncture. which has never happened in our history.
Meanwhile, it's unclear what the future holds for the Mugabe family since President Robert Mugabe resigned from office. And there's a lot of uncertainty on whether there'll be an investigation into some of the allegations against Mugabe and his wife, Grace. The duo are accused of numerous atrocities in that country. And it's unclear whether Mugabe's family will remain in Zimbabwe. The family reportedly owns a number of properties in South Africa, Singapore, Dubai, Mexico, and the Seychelles. The Mugabes also have businesses and properties such as Grace Mugabe's dairy farm. Let's take a look at some key questions. What are the chances of Mugabe seeking asylum in South Africa? And could there be demands now for Mugabe's trial by the International Criminal Court for alleged killings of Zimbabweans in the 80s? And is it possible for Grace Mugabe to continue living in that country? And what is the level of threat that the two face from their own party and the government headed by Mnangagwa? And the lines are open 011-542-2186. We're on social media at ANN7 TV or at I am Cindy Mabi. Joining us in studio, Fortune Mlalazi, Zimbabwe People's Democratic Party, and KF Malindi Jr., journalist and political analyst, Prince Abenj from the Heart of Africa, and Lindsay Marstorp, Black First, the Land First national spokesperson. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, thank you.
I'm really just curious to hear your reaction, Lindsay, especially as to what ought to happen. What is the right or humane thing to do with the atrocities that Robert Mugabe has been accused of? What needs to happen?
Pambiri, Ichimurengu Pambiri. Long live Robert Mugabe. I think the first thing we must realize is that Robert Mugabe remains the symbol of the liberation struggle. He remains the person or the leader who is in the ranks of Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, and so forth. The actions of Robert Mugabe are inspirational, and we take inspiration from that. But the question that we pose as BLF is, where is Robert Mugabe? Who wrote that letter of resignation? Why is he not come out and appeared and addressed the people of South Africa, people of Zimbabwe, the people of the liberated world, the black people the oppressed world, the black people of this continent? And we ask, how can someone that is experiences house arrest, a coup, how can those conditions be right for someone to willfully resign? This has been an open coup. It's an attack on the liberation struggle. And we must also acknowledge the hand of the West in this. So the question can't be about atrocities of Robert Mugabe. We are in war. The actions of Robert Mugabe within the construction of war. We recognize that he has not advanced the revolution significantly in the last decade by socializing the means of production. But at the same time, we must defend the liberated zone from the West, which aims to now reverse
Yes, but
aims.
you'll have many family members who still want closure of what happened in Matabeleland in the 80s, 20,000 or so, that need to have closure, and they're entitled to that. Mr. Malindi, do you agree with almost the protection that Mr. Marstorp is referring to regarding President Robert Mugabe?
I don't think that there's any protection. One of the misconceptions, unfortunately, is that you can actually take Robert Mugabe to the ICC, to The Hague. And the Rome Statute only came into place in 2002. So anything before the Rome Statute cannot be legally taken to the ICC. The only legal way to take Robert Mugabe to the ICC, to The Hague, would be Operation Mrambachina, where we're saying that it is, he evicted individuals from their livelihoods and from their homes. But what we call in Zimbabwe, Gukrahundi, would not be applicable to the ICC or to The Hague, no.
Okay, does that then mean that there is impunity, if you like, or that there is no accountability on the part of Robert Mugabe as it stands? Mr. Benj?
It's not about impunity. It's about the provisions of his international instrument, legal instrument. What he says is quite valid. We can look for another court, another legal or judicial instance to deal with that Gukurahundi in the 80s. But the ICC doesn't have power to deal with issues that happened before 2002, when the Rome Statute was adopted. So what doesn't please me at all is that the political debate in Zimbabwe and elsewhere in Africa put a special emphasis on political actors. That's not what I want to discuss too much. I more want to discuss about the victims of political actions, the Zimbabwean people, the ordinary people who have nothing to do with politics, who wake up in the morning and go to sell in markets. That's my main interest.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Mr. Malindi. We're just taking a caller, Richard in Walkerville. Good evening to you.
Good evening. How are you, sister?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fine. Yes.
What's your question or comment?
My comment is, I think Robert Mugabe should be given, he should be allowed to stay in Zimbabwe. He should not be pushed out of Zimbabwe to go and die out of the country. The old man has worked for our country so much. He pioneered a lot of things. He brought our freedom. Actually, I'm a bit surprised by most of the cowards, especially Love Mumatuke and the guys who are now coming out to say a lot of bad things about their leader. While all along they were the ones who were pushing for Robert Mugabe to stay in power while he was too old.
So you're saying, yeah, Richard, thank you so much. You're saying that Robert Mugabe is a victim of circumstance, or the company that he kept. We have Martin from Cosmo City. Good evening to you.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well. I want to comment on the show. Firstly, I want to congratulate the Zimbabweans for their deliverance from the hands of their president. Though they normally tell us, all these war veterans and liberators, they normally tell us that they fought for independence and so on and so forth. I want them to know that it wasn't by choice. If we were there as well, that time when they were fighting for all this liberation, we also would have been part of it. That's number one. So they should stop saying that because they fought for the liberation, then they have to hang on to power forever. Another thing that I want to say is that now that the diplomatic immunity has ceased to exist on the part of Grace Mugabe, we are waiting for her to come back to South Africa to come and answer questions due to that assault which she did some times ago in South Africa. And if the family seek asylum in South Africa, let South Africa grant him asylum to show him that every leader is not as wicked as he was when they are leading. They can grant him that asylum just for him to live for some time in South Africa. But he must answer whatever questions the country puts to him.
Yeah.
How he has plunged the country into a mess.
Thank you so much. Calling us from Cosmo City. Bringing it back here in studio, just to pick up on your train of thought. I think it's very unsafe for Robert Mugabe or Grace to come to South Africa, in the sense that, as our last caller referred to, the assault case, and of course there'll be those hounding him with regards to the atrocities we've spoken about. Just Mr. Malindi, in your view, picking up on what Mr. Benj said.
We need to also understand that legally it is Robert Mugabe's right to seek asylum. The same way all Zimbabweans have sought asylum with Zambia, South Africa, Namibia. The unfortunate circumstance for Robert Mugabe in this instance is Grace Mugabe's situation, where she is liable to court proceedings in South Africa. So, I mean, we definitely need to take that into circumstance. Also, going back to the ICC and The Hague, we need to understand that Zimbabwe is not, we have not acceded to the Rome Statute. We are a signatory, but we have not acceded, which means it has not been included into our domestic policy, which is our constitution. So, I mean, there are a lot of legalities and in situations
so
regarding...
We could say, based on the legalities, then he's safe from any prosecution, in a nutshell.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, all right, let's get a view here from Mr. Mlalazi. from the Zimbabwean People's Democratic Party, whether indeed Emmerson Mnangagwa will exercise that option of possibly prosecuting President Robert Mugabe, or the alternative of essentially giving him a send-off, a comfortable send-off.
Okay. I think there's one thing that we need to straighten up here. We are viewing this as if it's all about Robert Mugabe. But our view as the People's Democratic Party is that this is about the people of Zimbabwe. This time we must be dealing with issues of the people of Zimbabwe that are scattered all over the world, that are refugees, the people of Zimbabwe that are suffering in Zimbabwe because of Robert Mugabe. I will try and go back to what the other colleague said, that Robert Mugabe is a symbol of liberation, whatever that means. The clear issue here is that Robert Mugabe is a symbol of poverty. Robert Mugabe is a symbol of thuggery. Robert Mugabe is a symbol of murder, symbol of Murambatswina, political violence. All those things are associated with Robert Mugabe. If we are to talk about real liberation, we have liberation heroes such as General Lukautu Masuku, Joshua Nkomo, Tongo Gara, Mjuru. Those are the people that we can talk about, not Robert Mugabe, a man who can't even fire a pistol. He is not a liberation symbol.
Yeah, before Mr. Masop responds, we have Andrew calling us from Harare. Good evening to you, Andrew.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm very well, how are you?
Good.
What's your question or comment, Andrew?
Yes. My contribution is simple and straightforward. Robert Mugabe has done a lot to Zimbabweans. We all understand that. But the issue here is whatever was acquired by the family illegally, then you should be liable to any penal proceeding that should take place. So you can go anywhere, they've got that right, and the hosting country should welcome him. But the issue here is whatever he committed during his stay in power should be accountable and liable for that.
All right, Andrew, short and sweet. Thank you so much. Mashuru and Berea and Victor and Mankweng, we come to you. Hi, Mashuru.
Yes, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yes. I'm a Zimbabwean. I'm here in South Africa for 24 years. And what is happening in Zimbabwe, Mugabe, what was doing was not right for us, Amandebele, what you call it Amandebele. Mugabe abused the time of Kukura Hundi. Even now, the minister of Defense Forces was this guy who's going to be vice president of Zimbabwe. What is his name? This guy who's going to be president of Zimbabwe.
Emmerson
Mnangagwa is the one was chief commander of army in Zimbabwe. During that time, they killed us Amandebele, what you call it Amandebele. And then you run away, you come here in South Africa. And during that time of apartheid in Zimbabwe, us who were speaking Ndebele was having a task, even was no car going to Amandebele. In Mashonaland, everything was flowing, everything is on. So Mugabe at all.
Okay, Mashuru, thank you so much. We'll get our panelists to respond. Victor in Mankweng, good evening to you.
Good evening, madam.
Yes, sir.
Nice show.
Thank you.
Let me pick up the last caller. He said he ran away from Zimbabwe coming to apartheid South Africa. And what is he thinking we South Africans were up to with this apartheid boss who abused us like him? But Mugabe is my hero even today. Many of you got farms which you never thought they were belonging to you. It's only here we got to do the same, whereby land returned to the originality of those people. At the end of the day, those who are saying how bad he was, don't talk about ethnicity. Here we've got Zulus, Venda, and whatever. We are suffering the very same way. The Boers African Forum, Solidarity, you know, they're grouping all together. And our people's majority don't realize these Boers are really working towards something. Do me a favor, Mugabe is Actually, he's a hero of majority of South Africans. Because you take and just say, listen, if you don't like it, go to hell.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Mr. Mastor.
It's interesting to note this fake morality where we can criticize Mugabe, but we don't say Emerson in relation to the very crimes that we're accusing Mugabe of. And we must be able to, and I love the point that you made earlier that South Africa is not a safe space for Mugabe. It's true. There's only one safe space in the world that was known to us as black people of this continent. That is Zimbabwe, because it's a liberated zone. Now the challenge that we must understand now, the West has used the conditions that we didn't protect by advancing the revolution, socializing the economy. They've used that circumstance. And Emerson, he's a lover of power. And he's then sided with those very imperialists who we threw out so that he can maintain power. What we will see now is a reversal of the gains that we've got under Robert Mugabe. What we should have done is seen a deeper pushing through the socialization. So we must understand what is happening now. If we care about the Zimbabwean people authentically and truly, we won't put someone in power who is there for his own power gains so that he can maintain Zimbabwean people as oppressed people.
Mr. Malindi, is that a real threat in the sense that the gains could be reversed, the land could be essentially colonized or recolonized? Your view?
I think I'm on the wrong panel. Because it's very political, and I come here as a technocrat. And in all honesty, Emerson Mnangagwa is the right person to take over Zimbabwe and develop the country economically. What Zimbabweans are worried about at this point in time are bread and butter issues.
So even if it means you relinquishing your land or whatever settlement negotiation,
you'd rather be a slave.
There is no relinquishing of land.
You'd rather be a slave in a country.
There is no
That's what he's
relinquishing
saying.
of land.
You'd rather be a slave.
I think you're extremely wrong because now what you're doing is you're assuming.
You want a white boss to pay you a salary. That's what you want.
Where
you want to go back to slavery.
Right.
Where is this assumption coming
from? Why do you want to go back to slavery?
Where is this assumption
Mr. Malindi,
coming from,
just stay focused in you're saying that this is the right candidate to lead.
Which is why I'm saying, why is there this assumption, his assumption, that we want a white slave? No, that is not what we want to be. Zimbabweans want to work for Zimbabwe. And they have come out very clearly in solidarity to say that we are willing, we are coming up and we're saying, this is who we want to lead our country, and we want to lead our country in this direction.
But do you have the bargaining power, for lack of a better phrase, or are you going with a begging bowl to investors already?
Begging bowl to who?
Yeah, but your national debt is sitting at 11 trillion. What's it? 11 billion.
Is that what has led to this revolution?
And the economy in itself cannot sustain itself.
You see, we're not taking this from the beginning. You're talking about the international community. How has the international community been involved in what has happened in Zimbabwe in the last 2 weeks? This is a monumental event that occurred within ZANU-PF.
Okay.
Without the opposition.
Okay, Mr. Mugabes, there is no regime change agent according to...
They didn't have an electoral process. How can you say this is democratic what happened in ZANU-PF? It's a lie.
Yeah. Can we just get a different perspective?
To assist here. You see, one very important thing that is essential for us to be able to move forward as Africa is that we must sober up and look at our issues. And one of the most important things that I want to raise is that Africa has no economic challenges, but leadership challenges. And that is where our problem emanated from as Zimbabwe. The thing that we are calling for as Zimbabweans is that there is this culture of audit, actions audit. We must be able and we must be allowed as Zimbabweans to audit whoever played a role in any wrongdoing or right doing.
But if the criticism on Emerson is that they cut from the same cloth, he's been in the Mugabe regime for 30 odd years, what is going to be different? And especially
I totally
having given the challenges that the country faces.
Why is that a wrong assumption? Because we all know clearly that Robert Mugabe has been in control. And a lot of people failed to speak out because of his hold on the party. A lot of people have been within ZANU-PF, have been against his policies and his regime, but they were not able to speak out against his regime. So let's not say just because you were under his government, you were complicit. Of course, we would then, legally we would say complicit, but you were not necessarily in the fore.
I understand that there are factions within the army, including the ZANU-PF. It's not unique to only that party, but realistically speaking, what kind of arsenal, even, does the Zimbabwe have currently, or Mnangagwa, to turn around the economy without having to shed national assets, without having to shed a lot of the policies, indigenization policy, etc.?
I understand that there is this heat debate currently. The only problem is that we are witnessing a seeming constitutionality in Zimbabwe. So people want to convince us that there is a normal constitutional dispensation. It's not. Let's take the example of South Africa. What started the new South Africa was the 1994 election. It was a free, fair, transparent election. So if we want to come back to a trustworthy constitutionality in Zimbabwe, there has to be a free, transparent, and fair election. That's the starting point. This debate can go on and on and on and on.
Very briefly, last words to you, Mr. Master.
I really like the point that was made from the right here to say that we don't suffer economic challenges. That can only be said by a Zimbabwean, because a Zimbabwean knows that they own the means of production. In South Africa, we don't own, as black people, the land or the economy. It remains in white hands. So it's nice that a Zimbabwean can say, yes, we own, we don't suffer economic challenges. That's because Robert Mugabe led the revolution to take back the land. You don't understand what it means to still be in slavery.
Okay, we're going to leave it there and continue on social media. That's at ANN7TV. I beg your pardon. And our guest in Studio 4, Chinam Lalazi, Zimbabwe People's Democratic Party, KF Malindi, Jr., a journalist and political analyst. He calls himself a technocrat. And Prince Abenge from the Heart of Africa, and Lindsay Mastor, Black First, the Land First, the national spokesperson. Thank you so much for calling in. We'll take a quick break. We'll see you shortly.